We are now live on YouTube and I'm recording the meeting.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. Welcome to Skegness Management Committee on Wednesday, the 31st of March 2020 via Zoom. Hopefully people have tuned in to see us. Moving on to the agenda, item number 1, minutes of the last meeting are attached, pages 16, 17 and 18. Councillor Dan Clerk.
I propose that we adopt the minutes, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Barry. Thank you. All in favour, please show. Got a lot of screens moving around, so I can't, there's no steady picture.
Certainly the majority there, I think.
Yeah, thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 2, to note apologies received by the town clerk, please.
We have apologies from Councillor Mark Anderson and Councillor Steve Empson. We've also got potential apologies for those that are running late from Councillors Danny Brooks and Steve Clerk.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 3, to receive declarations of interest. Councillor Billy Brooks.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just regarding the planning at the end of the meeting, I'll be leaving for that as I'm on plan at the LDC.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Burnham.
Yeah, item number 8, myself and Adrian Finlay are part of the Wilcath.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Adrian Finlay.
Yeah, I was just going to try what Travis says really on the World Cafe.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Jimmy Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be leaving the meeting just as the planning starts. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 4, reviewed public facing COVID risk assessments, amended risk assessments, which are attached. Town clerk, please.
Yes, Mayor. And these are the regular updates. We're updating it for the opening now, but of course, guidance is changing all of the time, and we do expect there to be further operational changes to the risk assessments, especially for the cafe as that opens, because the exact details haven't yet been released by government, and will only be done so, I think, 2 weeks prior to the official date.
Councillor Edgington, you did put your hand up. Was that? I think you might wanted to just put a declaration of interest in.
Just bear with me. Just bear with me. No, I've just had a phone call from Councillor Dennis. He can't get connected. Could somebody call him so we can join the meeting, please? Okay, he just called me a few moments ago. Thank you.
Councillor Jimmy Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a question for the clerk regarding the cafe dance set. You said the outside seating. Will they be allowed to use the bandstand as part of seating as well, or not? Thank you.
Mayor, the council has already agreed previously that the cafe can use the bandstand when the bandstand is not otherwise booked or in use for its usual purposes.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Dan Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to propose that we adopt the risk assessment.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Brooks. Councillor Jimmy Brooks has seconded. All in favour, please show. Clive, thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 5, Town Clerk update report. The report is attached.
Yeah, Mayor, the section 1 is really for just updating. So the town meeting, just a reminder, will be at 7 p.m. on the 28th of April. It's slightly, this is, I think it's going to be quite a tricky one because we will be in Purda, but we are legally required to have a meeting before the end of May. But of course, we can't meet in person, and the regulations that relate to meetings, including the town meeting, say after the 6th of May, are no longer permitted to be held via Zoom. So we have to hold it before, but that will be in the further period. So we just need to be a little bit mindful of that when we're running the meeting, and make sure that we stay focused away from any potentially political, politically controversial areas, or especially for those that that may be intending to take part in the elections. The Jolly Fisherman paintings are going to be unveiled on the 12th, Monday the 12th. It is, again, it's one of those things. It would be lovely to have everybody there, but we can't. We have to abide by the COVID rules. We will be having the press there, and we've got an official photographer. And the intention is also to do the presentation of the awards that council agreed at the last meeting. So we'll be doing that on the day. Clearly, for the public, you can't come into that controlled area during this period of time, but the council offices will open once once the paintings have been unveiled and the people who are there have dispersed. So just a reminder again, Cafe Dansant will open on the 15th of May for outside seating, weather permitting, but inside, under the COVID restrictions, whatever they may be when they're finally published, from the 17th of May. And we are now currently taking bookings for the hall again. So, and we've had some interest already. So that's good. Moving on to item 2 within the reports, 2 of the councillors who were put forward for the Environment and Climate Working Group have indicated that they don't want to participate in that any longer for various reasons, and therefore we need 2 new members to be put forward so that the work of that group can be taken forward. We can come back to that when we get to the recommendations. The item 3 is about setting up a preferred contractor list. Now, what we're finding is it is quite difficult to get hold of contractors, especially at relatively short notice. So if we need something looked at, or maintenance or servicing done, we're finding it quite difficult to get hold of the appropriate people in a timely way. So the idea behind this is that we advertise and then hold a list of potential contractors who would meet our criteria for employing them. So having the appropriate certificate of public liability insurance, holding the appropriate other certificates for the work type, e.g. if they're electricians or work at height, or they're doing any of those other jobs, that we've got all that paperwork then available, so that when we employ them, we don't have to then go through those checks in as much detail. That's part of the problem that we have at the moment. So the suggestion there is that we create this scheme, this list. New contractors can come on board at any time as long as they meet the criteria. We'll keep a list of those, and then if any work arises, we've got a short list of contractors who we can go to get a price for the work from. What many councils do, it tends to be for the lower end of pricing. So if we were doing something very large and expensive, then we would follow the rules set out in the financial regulations and standing orders, and go through, if required, a tender process. But for the low level works, this is an ideal way of doing it. Then moving on to Tower Gardens. I think following our long period of lockdown, there is this opportunity of moving forward in Tower Gardens and improving it for the season to welcome people back. Now, we know that there has been some grants obtained for the winter time for the seasonal lighting at Christmas, and those will be being looked at a bit later on in the year. But coming up to spring now, and if we're going to do something in Tower Gardens for spring, then now would be the ideal opportunity. So what I'm putting forward is that we have some tubs outside the pavilion, something around the bandstand, maybe some hanging baskets, or the tubs that sit on top of the rails, and have those planted up for summer to make it a bit more attractive and a bit more welcoming for those coming into the gardens. So I've suggested a budget there of 2,500, and for that to come from the Tower Gardens and Pavilion Maintenance and Improvement Reserve, as it's not directly budgeted. We could also potentially attract some funding from the new government Welcome Back Fund, which East Lindsey will be administering. Now, that the regulations and criteria for that are still coming out, and they're due out over the next couple of weeks. I have had an initial discussion with East Lindsey about it, because the Minister, Robert Benrick, has written to both town and parish councils and also to principal authorities, saying that the funding that the government are providing should be spent, either it should be allocated to parish and town councils to spend, or that it should be spent in conjunction with town and parish councils. So I've been in discussion with East Lindsey about how that will work, and I've got a further meeting next week to discuss that. And that, I understand, is going to be their intention to do that. So there may be the opportunity of getting some further funding, and that further funding could perhaps put even more additional planting into Tower Gardens, and I'm thinking around the entrances where they would be most visible. So in Grand Parade, at the back entrance, and on the Rutland Road entrance as well, around those sorts of areas, to make it much more attractive. But also potentially that could fund the Silver Band coming back for summer, and playing in the bandstand on a Sunday afternoon. Now, I don't know yet whether or not the fund can fund the Silver Band, and we will need, in the not too distant future, if we want that to happen, to actually secure them playing there. The cost is £275 for 2 hours, and in a normal season there's only 4 or 5 performances that occur. So what I'm suggesting there is it's not budgeted there, and we should apply for the funding. But if the funding isn't available, then again we may have to fall back on the reserve if council or the committee wants to move forward with that as an idea. So what I'm doing there is trying to seek some delegated authority, because over the next couple of months things are going to be a little bit tricky to move forward. After the 6th of May, we're not going to be able to have our Zoom meetings, but equally we won't be in a position to have face-to-face meetings either. So it's left us a little bit without that decision-making ability. So if you tonight want to give me a steer on the sorts of things that you might wish to me to look at, I would propose that you then delegate authority to me to take those ideas and discuss them with East Lindsey with a view to getting them funded through, so that they're ready for the summer period. Moving on from that, the Cafe Dansan, we had a little bit of money that wasn't spent when we were setting it up because the COVID came into being. And what we'd like to do there, we've had an offer of a sofa for a suitable sofa for the cafe area, but we'd like to introduce some planting, some table pots, a couple of coffee tables with some magazine, rack, and an area to store some play equipment. Because the unspent money was moved into the reserves at the end of the last year, I'd need a further approval to actually spend that. So I'm hoping that you'll be able to give that right so that I can get on and get those things organised. Moving on to section 6, we've been approached by a local school regarding the cutting of their grass, in particular a field. I estimate there's about an hour's work for 2 people to do this cut. We haven't at this stage got any details of how frequently they would want it cut, and indeed whether it's the whole amount or just the sports area. We don't currently have any policy in place to guide myself or staff on this, but it does raise a few questions. I mean, what I would say is currently the team are fully occupied with cutting verges. In the next 12 months or so, it's likely that some newly adopted roads will be coming over from County Council, which I'm presuming Council will want to cut in the same way as it cuts other verges. We only get a small amount of money to undertake these cuts, and that will put pressure on the team. Now, we're not at a point where the additional grass areas are large enough for us to turn around and say, well, okay, we get enough extra income that we can afford to employ an extra person, and we can afford to purchase additional equipment to do that. So we will have to do it from the existing resources, and that means that it's going to take a little bit longer to do to go round. So that puts pressure on. Now, if we take on contract work, we can only take on contract work for other public sector bodies. Otherwise, it would have to be done under a trading arm. But if we've got a contract with another party and there becomes a problem which is delaying the, could they reasonably say, well, we've got a contract with you, we pay you this money, we expect you to up in accordance with that contract, and therefore that would put even more pressure on our own cutting if we had to treat them as the first priority. So, as I say, there are difficulties there in that we haven't really thought about how that would work going forward, and I haven't got any guidance or indication from council as to how you would want to react to that. The other question that I've got as well is not for you, but it's just a general question out there that again hasn't been really considered, is that where there are new housing estates with public open space, historically East Lindsey have taken those on and then looked after them. Now they have disbanded the team that they had to look after the grass areas in Skegness, and we currently use under the lands that were transferred as part of the asset transfer. But I would say the balanced basket, because the idea was that those assets that we got, which had like the liability of maintaining them, came across, but in the other side of that basket was that we had the car park, kiosks, and other potential revenue earning things. So again, I'm not sure how that's going to play out in the future, and what will happen if, for example, East Lindsey say, well, no, we're not going to take that on. Does it just stay uncut, or does the current builder have to continue to maintain it? I don't know what the rules and regs are around that. It's certainly not clear. So coming to the recommendations at the end there. So recommendations are that the update I gave at the beginning is noted. That the council, the committee now appoint 2 new members to the Environment and Climate Change Working Group. That the committee authorise me to set up a preferred contractor list. That the committee authorise a budget of £2,500 from the Tower Gardens and Pavilion Maintenance and Improvement Reserve for floral tubs, hanging baskets or railing planters for the bandstand. That you decide whether and how to proceed with the silver band concerts on Sundays. That you approve the remaining £1,000 Cafe Dansant furnishings, and the budget's released from the Tower Gardens and Pavilion Maintenance and Improvement Reserve. That you advise me how you want to proceed with the grass cutting issues that I've raised, and finally that, and this reverts back to the Welcome Back Fund. It's not on the recommendations, but I'm adding that in as it's something that I've heard in the last week or so. That you give me delegated authority to work with East Lindsey District Council to decide how and when to spend money from the Welcome Back Fund. But of course, if you give me your ideas now about where that should go, then I will be in a good position to be able to steer them in the right direction.
Thank you for that. I'll just bring up the list. We've got quite a few people with their hands up. Councillor Finlay, please.
Yeah, good, thank you. I don't want to swamp the town clerk with loads of, but if the town clerk could come back straight on a couple of 3 things I've got, Mr. Mayor, that would be lovely. Firstly, item 3, the preferred contractors. I find it really hard to believe with the amount of trades on here. We've got so many, electricians, plumbers, carpenters throughout the town. I find it really hard to believe that we can't find a local contractor to come at short notice. And my concern with that is obviously over the years, as well as some of you might know, you call a contractor in from far afield, there's extra hours for travelling, there's extra fuel costs, admin costs. It just doesn't stack up why we need to have a list from out of town. So as regards the proposal, I think it's a really bad idea. I think we should search a lot nearer to home, you know, probably within a 5-mile radius of Skegness, and look at every option and give them the option, both on the paperwork side to make sure they fit the criteria within what's required by the council. Certainly not turn their backs on the local trades after what we've just been through, and give outsiders a chance to come in and rub their noses in it. I think it's a terrible idea. I don't think we should get wrong with that at all.
Can I, Councillor Finley, can I just deal with that one and then
Yeah,
go on? It's not the intention to advertise it out of town. The idea is to encourage local traders to come forward. It is a problem with local traders. It's taken us nearly 3 months to get a plumber who is willing to come out and do work, and we've had numerous conversations with local plumbers, and they've literally not turned up time after time after time. But we also need documentation from them. And to be honest, if it's a choice between them going and doing in somebody's house, their work, and providing us with a certificate of this and a certificate of that, they can't be bothered if it's a small amount of money job. So the idea is that we advertise, get local trades to send their paperwork in one go, and then once we've got that, it's much easier for us to go back and say, well, we've already seen all your paperwork, we know we can employ you, can you give us a price for this job?
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Councillor Finley.
Yeah. Secondly, the Tower Gardens. Obviously, with a £2,500 pot, I do know from years gone by on the boating lake, there's an island. Used to have a figure of a jolly fisherman filled with flowers. Looked amazing, attracted people, and people used to go look at it, photo it. You know, there's postcards and the memorabilia of it. And I believe some of you senior councillors, should we say, might remember the one. I think there was one in the Compass Gardens as well. But as you go in the Tower Gardens, looking up towards the Embassy Centre, we've got 2 big banks there that aren't really used. People tend to come down into the park, use the play areas. I think one of those banks, personally, preferably as you're looking at the Embassy Centre, the left-hand side, a flower display in there. There are local trades that supply flowers. They can grow specific colours to suit the Jolly Fisherman character. It's easy enough to make a profile to fit those flowers. And I think you could easily come within a nice flower display of the Jolly Fisherman on that bank for a short spell of the year, depending on what type of flower you had. So something on that lines, I would like to see. If not this year, then definitely, council. I think we should look at it as a council as a symbol that people do enjoy coming to see, and it's worked in the past. It looks fantastic, and I think it's a good idea. But obviously, as a council, we need to look at the cost of it. And thirdly, the £1,000 that you've got for sprucing up the cafe, all right, newspaper holders and stuff like that are great, but we've just obviously been through the budget. We've looked at the budget. We know that the cafe has used, funds. We've had some grant helps on it, but we still are looking at uncertain times at the moment, whether that cafe is going to bounce back or whether it's still going to lose money. So I think that £1,000 really should be kept hold of in case it's needed, rather than go spending it on, things that aren't essential. I see the point of getting them, making it look more inviting, but I think £1,000 in the pot that could be used if needed is more valuable than, newspaper holders. Thank you.
Town Clerk, please.
Right, on the flower display item, what I would suggest there is if you're minded to give me the delegated authority, that could be one of the things that I approach for this year, East Lindsey, to talk about being funded from the Welcome Back Fund. That would give a bit of time also to find out how much it's going to cost if we want to do it on an ongoing basis. And council, if it did want to do that, would then have time to put that money into next year's budget to do that. So that would be one way of trying to move that forward quickly. Regarding the cafe, when we was open last year, some of the comments that we had back was that it was quite stark in that, you know, we've got our tables and chairs, we haven't got anything else really in there. As I say, we're going to get a sofa. Ideally, we could have a couple of coffee tables that go with that, which is going to encourage people in. But just some pot plants and table decorations and things like that to help finish it off. This is money that was originally in the budget to do those sorts of things, but because we hit COVID, we had to keep. Certainly, we didn't know how we were going to move forward at that time, and we've kept things very sort of bland and clear at the moment because that helps with the cleaning routines. But as we come out on the 21st out of the lockdown restrictions, it would be nice if we can have the cafe a little bit more welcoming and a little bit more sort of softer than that it is at this moment in time.
Thank you. Councillor Billy Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I've just got a few questions with regards to the preferred contractors list. Whilst I understand the need to have such a list, the name preferred contractors, I don't think sits quite right, because you always hear about companies and people going, oh, if you're on the council list, you've got it made, and things like that. And calling it a preferred contractor just doesn't sit right. So I think we need to rethink the name of, you know, when you're advertising it to some maybe, I don't know, approved or something along the lines of that they've been through the process, that they've put the documentation, not preferred, because then it looks like you're picking favourites when you're looking in from the outside. And then just the question about the Welcome Back Fund. What I think you might have said it, but what actually is it? Could you just explain a little bit more? I might have missed that bit.
Town Clerk, please.
So with the preferred contractor list, I mean, it's a term that's been used for many, many years, which is why I've used it. But yeah, approved list is equally as good, and we can easily change it to say that that's not a problem. In relation to the Welcome Back Fund, what's happened is the government has set aside, I think it's about 54 million pounds, I think it is, and it's particularly aimed at those areas which are touristy areas, to welcome back visitors. And each of the local authorities covering those areas have got an allocation of funds, which it's a bit like a grant again, that they will have to meet certain criteria, but it is intended to be for improving green spaces, providing attractive displays. It's all about making the town more welcoming, or welcoming back the visitors that have been away. So the criteria for that, as I say, hasn't yet come out. So we've only got what the government has generally put out in their press statement, but that should be coming out over the next 2 to 3 weeks. And those are the conversations that I need to be having with East Lindsey District Council.
Thank you for that, for them answers. Yeah, I think I was getting confused because I know the government have recently announced a business fund. I didn't know if that's what it was, but that sounds great, and using it for that obviously will be beneficial. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brooks. Councillor Richard Cunnington.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'd just like to first offer my apologies. I was late getting in. I was struggling to get connected. And secondly, on the environmental working group that we were looking to set up, unfortunately, I do return back to work tomorrow after a year off due to COVID. I could attend on a Friday if that would be any good. I'm more than happy to still be part of the group, but just the hours of attendance, I can only do Fridays, which is going to be generally my regular day off. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cunnington. Councillor Dick Edgington, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just an observation on the item relating to grass cutting. I would agree with the clerk insofar as that it would be unwise to take anything on unless, in my view, that extra work would generate income. Now, the report says that we could only take on work if it was another public sector body. And what we wouldn't want to do, in my view, is that, say, cutting the school playing fields, as for instance, it would put extra pressure on our staff and the time allocated to do their existing workload. And to me, if that doesn't generate any income, it's a rather pointless exercise. That's just my personal view, because I'm all for the council using its expertise and staff where permissible to generate income to offset the costs of running the authority. But reading this, unless I misunderstood it, it wouldn't seem to me if we was to do that, it would be totally counterproductive. So as I say, the clerk said that in his report that it's a no-goer. Am I correct, Mr. Clark, Mr. Town Clerk?
Not exactly. The likelihood there would be an income generated from cutting the school grass. What I'm saying is that it wouldn't be sufficient to allow us to recruit additional members of staff or to buy more equipment. Yes, it would be some more money in the coffers, but it would stretch out the existing team and the existing, as would, additional verge cutting, which is likely to be heading our way as new estates get adopted.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dan Kirk.
I think the clerk might be able to help, but I need to declare a Category B declaration of interest as I'm a governor for the Richmond School.
Town Clerk.
I didn't mention the school purposefully, but yes, now that you have mentioned it, a Category B declaration would be appropriate.
Thank you, Councillor Kirk. Councillor Jimmy Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've just got a couple of things for the clerk. I agree with AD regarding like the term Jolly Fisherman and flower area, and I think that'd be a fantastic idea because it will like enhance the Jolly Fisherman brand. The silver band, providing we get funding, because I don't think the council should pay for that at the moment. We should obviously go down the route of trying and get the grant, because it's a lot of money for a few hours, to be honest. The unspent £1,000, I think we should hold on to that for the time being, because I think we need to wait until maybe June, July to see how things pan out and then revisit it. Then if it is looking okay, then yeah, look at spending it on the things. But the only concern is you mentioned like newspaper stands and that sort of stuff. Is that the sort of thing we want to be promoting due to the COVID issues with people touching everybody else's newspapers? And also the grass cutting. Yeah, it's great if we can make some kind of income from it, but if it's going to make the rest of the town's grass not look so great, then it's not going to be a viable option, to be honest. Thank you.
Thank you. Town Clerk.
Regarding things like the newspaper magazine racks, we wouldn't put those out until after the restrictions lifted. I mean, the government roadmap says that currently on the 21st of June, all restrictions are going to be lifted. Now, whether that is actually the case, we don't know. But if we're having, if we're having coffee table, we're trying to create a sort of softer appearance. Having coffee tables with shelves underneath that can hold a few magazines, or perhaps a few for the future, a few children's toys, or colouring books or things like that. I'm thinking for the future. I'm not necessarily thinking of putting those actual things out at this moment in time, but when regulations allow.
Thank you. Answer your question, Councillor Brooks.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sid Dennis, please.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Sorry
Good
for
evening.
being late. I was trying to get onto the wrong meeting at the wrong time, unfortunately. Apologies for that. Yeah, the little bit that just struck me was about the silver band. Why don't we as a council write to the bid to see if the bid could help fund the town band? Because, you know, it's up to the bid board to deliver entertainment, and maybe we could match fund with the town council and we could deliver the town band, because it would be good for locals as well as a boost for tourism, because it's a nice thing to happen. So I don't know if it's worth town clerk writing to myself at the bid board, and I can put it to the board and see what I can come up with there, if that's a help.
Thank you, Councillor Dennis. Councillor Claxton, please.
Afternoon. This is evening, rather. It's a question just for the clerk, really. Another council, I don't know if I'm allowed to mention them, but another council have planted 8 miles of wildflowers on their grass verges, saving £25,000 a year in grass cutting. Is this something that we can look into? That's just a question for the town clerk.
Town clerk, please. Sorry, you can answer Councillor Dennis's question. I was looking down, sorry.
Yes, in response to Councillor Dennis's questions, yeah, we can certainly write to the bid and ask for some help funding. I think it would be worth pursuing the Welcome Back fund as well at the same time, either by way of mutually supporting that, or by way of extending it to perhaps even more Sundays, so that there's a regular presence and something of entertainment for people to see in the gardens. Coming back to Councillor Claxton's comments regarding the grass verge, my understanding is that the grass verges which are being planted with wildflowers are those rural verges. So they're the ones that are alongside the roads without pavements. It is, we could certainly look, and that might be something that the Environment Working Group might want to look at. We could look at planting the verges with that, but bear in mind what we've seen before when they're allowed to grow is long grass, dog mess, and litter. And is that what you want in the town centre? That isn't as likely to occur because you don't get so many walkers out on the grass verges on the main roads, and having those with wildflowers and growing up. The grass grows there anyway because they're only cut twice or 3 times a year. So it's really a question of what the council wants to see on those grass verges. They are obviously Lincolnshire County Council verges, so anything that's done with that would have to be in agreement with Lincolnshire County Council. But I think it's worth taking a step back and just imagining what they would look like if they're 12, 18 inches high with wildflowers and full of litter and dog mess.
Thank you, Town Clerk. Councillor Saxon. Councillor Saxon. Seem to have lost Councillor Saxon. You need your microphone turning on, Councillor Saxon. Can we unmute him, Town Clerk? Is it possible? He's got some issues.
I can only ask to unmute. I can't actually unmute.
Okay, it's Councillor Saxon's. He had his hand up. I can't see or hear you, Councillor Saxon. Just see if he can connect. I'll just say good evening to Councillor Clerk, who's joined us.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, and I do apologise for my lateness. I was at another meeting.
We were aware, thank you.
Yeah.
Can't bring councillors. Anybody else wishing to speak? Can't seem to get Councillor Saxon. Councillor Jimmy Brooks, yes, you put your hand back up, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Basically, I'd like to agree with Councillor Dennis. And I think we should write to the bid, see if they can help with the Silver Band and any other events that may be possible that they could point us towards, really, or help with it. I think it'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Billy Brooks, you had your hand up. Gone down. Councillor Saxon, we can hear you now.
Yeah, I don't know what's happening. I'd just like to agree with what Councillor Dennis said. The band is actually very popular with local residents, as well as the national fund. It's a good idea. I'd like to apologise.
We're losing you, Councillor Saxon. Can't hear a word of it, sorry. Your internet, we won't ask you who your internet provider is, but it's not very good. Sorry. We can't hear you. Sorry. Seem to have lost some connection. Councillor Cunnington.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, question for the clerk on this one, please. On the grass cutting, how many times a year could he clarify that we are bound by contract with the county council to cut the verges we currently cut? And then there may be some follow-ons from that. Thank you.
Town Clerk, please.
It's three times a year, which are the health and safety cuts. So normally they would be in May, June, and later in the year. But of course, we know that health and safety cuts is still the grass grows rapidly and it's very long on just those cuts.
Thank you for that, Mr. Clark. So that's our contracted cutting of 3 times a year, which obviously we get a fee paid to us for doing those cuts, which we've already discussed in a previous meeting. These extra cuts on these fields that we're looking at would obviously generate an income, and that income we would obviously help towards pay the team that we've already got, that we already employ with the skills and knowledge, experience and the machinery to do the job. But at the end of the year, it would also generate the income to relieve our residents in some of the council tax money that we have to pay, because obviously it would affect the precept because we would be generating further income. So long as the income is worth taking on board,
So it's not.
I think we need to look at, even if we've got to reduce slightly on the cuts we do to the county council, not drastically, but just slightly, to just generate enough income to help towards some of the costs, I would be up for that idea.
Thank you, Town Clerk.
I mean, as of today, it's very difficult for me to say what the impact would be because, as I say, I think there's, an hour's work for a couple of people. If we were required to do it once a week, which is a sports field, so that might be, if we don't know, we haven't got that information, then by the time you get there, unload, do the work, reload, and then go off and elsewhere, it would be disruptive. And as I mentioned earlier, the likelihood is that we will be getting additional verges as well to come. the other point is that I raised that if we were going down the route of cutting it for a school, which, you know, that's quite possible that we do that if they want. I mean, we haven't got the discussion yet to a point where they've made the inquiry. We haven't priced it as yet because we don't know exactly what it is they want to do. They haven't set out a full specification. But when we get to that point, if council want to move ahead with that, we could do that. But what I would say is that as we get additional verges on, we will reach a point where we will not be able to keep the verges to the current or close to the current standard without additional resources. And you know, there comes a point where the standards sort of fall off until you get to a point and say, well, we've got this extra amount of grass, we need an extra person and an extra machine to be able to up the standard again. So those are the impacts. So it's as I say, we can certainly do it if that is what council are minded to want to do, and I can certainly go back and pursue a more detailed specification. But I didn't want to do that if council weren't minded to do it, because it's obviously there's work involved in pricing it up, and you would also have to think about that issue that I raised about if you've got a contract with somebody to do it, does that then take precedent over the council's own work?
Yeah, thank you for that, Mr. Clark. And that is roughly what I was getting at, that things are going to have to slip a little bit until we can actually get enough work to employ more resources. So if you was able to, or my suggestion on your recommendation would be that you go back and look at it, cost it up further, but bear in mind a cycle of work for the work we already have. So instead of being cutting on a weekly basis or a fortnightly as we do it, put it on an 8-day rolling rota that you put a schedule in place. Instead of cutting one verge one day, one another day, keep the same amount of work, but just put them onto a rolling rota and including 1 day a week for the school, so that you can actually, like you say, something's got to give until there's enough that we can actually benefit by taking on extra resources.
Thank you. Can I just remind Councillor? Sorry, Town Clerk. Can I just remind Councillor Edgerton he's got his microphone on?
Beg you.
It's okay. Sorry,
beg your pardon.
Just to respond to that, we already have a rolling programme, and it takes us between 2.5 and 3 weeks to get around the whole 300,000 square metres of grass. Now that rolling programme, obviously, if it's wet, it could take us 4.5, maybe even 5 weeks to get around, because wet grass is difficult to cut. And also, if we do have a period of wet weather or fast growing weather, the grass can grow, and it can take us a lot longer to get around because we're having to cut longer grass. So the longer the grass that is allowed to grow, the longer it will actually take to get round. So it becomes almost a self-fulfilling sort of situation. So I do see some operation. I don't think it would be just a slight, nobody's going to notice, especially once we start taking on the additional verges, which I know are going to be coming our way as the roads are adopted on the new estates.
Thank you, Councillor Billy Brooks.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a bit of guidance, really. Just regards people debating about spending extra money on the cafe. Obviously, I work in a cafe, so just a bit of advice from the clerk of should I not take part in the vote?
Town Clerk, please. Town Clerk.
I mean, the question, it's not for me to answer that question, it's for you to decide. The point I would put to you would be, would the public reasonably believe that your working in a cafe would influence your decision and the way that you voted. If you think that they would think that, then you would be right to not take part in that part of the vote.
Well, in that case, I best just do as you say, then not take part in that, if possible.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Brooks. Councillor Steve Kirk.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Unfortunately, I've missed most of this debate, but there are two items that I've heard being debated, so I'll make comment on those. Firstly, the silver band. Councillor Saxon is quite right. The silver band playing in Tower Gardens has always been very, very popular with residents, not just holidaymakers, but with residents. They knew when it was on, and they went and got their deck chair bright and early to listen to the silver band play. So that being the case, is it all the world if this council agrees to underwrite for its residents approximately £1,000 to provide a silver band? I can remember the arguments this council has had with East Lindsey and MV when they decided to reduce some of the payments for the silver band, and we said how important it was and it should happen. And now we have the opportunity not to guarantee a spend of £1,000, £1,200, but that's a maximum we could possibly spend on the underwriting. I would suggest there are many funds that are out there that could help support this, not least of all anybody who is aware of the new fundings that are coming down to help support the economy and help the economy bounce back. That certainly fits into that remit. So I don't think we would end up being liable for the £1,000 to £1,200. But even if we were, I don't think there are many residents in Skegness who would complain that we'd spent £1,200 not only in supporting our local silver band, but also in providing some much needed right relief on a Sunday afternoon or whatever day it may be for residents. So that's my first observation. My second observation is regarding grass cutting. When this council, not this version of council, but a previous council agreed to start grass cutting, there was always an intention that we would look to expand this service. That was always the intention, that we'd agree to expand this service and bring in some income for this town council, as rightly said, to offset the council tax that our residents have to pay. Anybody who's in business knows there comes a really, really hard point where do you take on more work before you've got the extra staff because you're not quite sure whether it's going to pan out. Anybody in business in this room will know that's a decision they always make. What comes first, the work or the staff? But it's always the work that comes first and then the staff. So if we could explore this further and see if it really is 2 hours, because if we're adding 2 hours onto the work of our staff, that's not a huge ask, I wouldn't suggest. If the slip on all other jobs was only a slip of 2 hours, that isn't really going to impact anybody or anything at all. So I would certainly agree it's worth exploring. If it comes back as a much bigger job and we just can't take it in, well, that's fair enough. But this is supporting a local school where our children or our grandchildren go. And if we can support that as a local council by cutting their grass and getting paid for it, I can't think of a reason at all that we wouldn't do that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Finlay.
Yeah, just for clarification, and I'm backtracking a little bit, but just on item 3. So are we actually going with the idea that we obviously we're going to word it to a more appropriate wording than what's down, as suggested by Billy Brooks, and that we are primarily going to be looking at local tradesmen, reliable local tradesmen to be put on that list before we search farther afield? Thank you. Just clarification on it.
Thank you. Councillor Ty. I'll bring the clerk back in, Thompson, in a second.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On the grass cutting, I do believe that you're right in taking it on, as Councillor Kirk said. The work comes first and then the staff. If you can't get the staff to get an extra 2 hours over a week, then I think we're employing the wrong people. You know, I mean, come on, 2 hours, it's nothing. But you've got to look at how much it's going to bring in. The figures have not been done yet. Let's get the figures done and then we can discuss it further. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dennis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with Councillor Ty, but I also am very mindful that, yes, we do need to expand it. Yes, I'm in business myself. and I take on the work and then decide how I'm going to do it. But I would be very mindful that we're not going to take away from what we are doing now. Because at the moment, our grass cutting is very good, and it's very highly praised local by our residents. And I wouldn't want to see that by letting it slip in other places. You still want to maintain where you're going to be, and you can't let it slip on county stuff that's health and safety wise. If they need it to be, say for instance, 12 foot from the junction, that's what it has to be. It can't be 9 foot. You can't let it slip that way. And I'm very, very happy to support the council moving forward to having a look at the work, and I certainly we do need to that. And then we can really make an informed decision. But I don't want what we are offering now to slip at all within that. It's very important we maintain what we have now.
Thank you. Councillor Cunnington.
Yeah, thank you for letting me back, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to throw one other thing in the mix with the grass cutting. Obviously, other councillors feel that it's important to try to expand the business and generate income. For a short period of time, we do have an option if the clerk would be willing to consider this as well. And that would be to, for a start, once he's explored the situation, to just bear in mind that we could use overtime so that we're not letting the services slip, and that for the extra couple of hours a week or whatever it may be, once he looks into the situation, and it's all ifs, buts, and what happens when scenarios at present. But if we were to use overtime, that would be covered by the cost that's generated as an income, which would help us obviously be looking towards expanding. And once we've got enough work, then we could look to expand.
Thank you. Now, just before I bring the town clerk back, this is something that is going to grow with the new houses developments that as they go through, we are going to have to look at expanding. And one could have, all the councillors singing from the same hymn sheet, as far as I can read into, is that obviously the schools come, we're obviously doing a great job. We don't want to see we don't want to see that deteriorate. It's absolutely fantastic. Maybe more people will want these services. So I think it's something, until the town clerk does go away and come back with some information, I don't think we should just throw it under the bus out the way, because I can see probably more schools wanting this service. Maybe some of the small villages that can't afford to get these contractors in will want these services, and maybe it's something we could look forward to provide, which would also cost extra lawnmowers and staff, but it's probably a way forward as a business. But we must not let this deteriorate what we've created, because the grass cutting absolutely looks fantastic. It did all last year, even through all the periods, it looked great. So, town clerk, please, if you could just come back.
Right, on those points. Firstly, in relation to the point Councillor Finlay raised, when we get to going through the recommendations, council will have to put forward what they're proposing and seconding in relation to each of those. So if the committee decide that it wants approved contractor rather than preferred contractor, then that can be incorporated within that proposal and seconding. In relation to the points raised about overtime, and it's missing the point a little bit in that we already have annualized hours. So we have a fixed number of hours which we allocate across the summer. So some weeks people will already be doing more than a standard week, especially when the grass is growing quickly. So it's not a case of it's a case of how much work you can actually do during the week. And obviously we've got a routine of our machines going off, being serviced, etc. So we have to build all of that in to our grass cutting routines as well. It's not dead simple and straightforward. The other point in terms of expanding, I was here tonight it was really about getting the point of principle as to whether I go back and speak further with the school. I don't know whether ultimately it might be that the price that we can do it for is too expensive, or they want a bigger service than we can offer, or they may need equipment. But for instance, we don't have the rollers and all of those sorts of things if it's a specialist field. I don't know. I've got no detail about it at this moment in time. But if tonight you're saying, yes, we in principle want to do it, then I can go back and find out all of that information. But bear in mind, if you expand and have a majority, or start to get to a position where your staff are supported by contracts that we have outside, the council then has risks, because it has the risks of, if those contracts are cancelled, of making people redundant and the costs associated with that. It has the risks of having equipment either leased or purchased that it no longer needs and can use. So council and committee need to be aware of all of those things and take those into consideration when making a decision. It's very easy to say, oh yes, that's a good idea, we can make some money, but actually the amount of money that you make may not be sufficient to cover those extra risks that you're incurring. So I can certainly go away and get more information and come back, and that's, I can judge at the meeting that's where you're likely to vote tonight.
Thank you. Anybody else wanting to speak? So what have you got the information down then, Town Clerk, of what is required?
Well, I think we need to go through the recommendations one by one, and council committee need to say what they want to do. So the first recommendation is that the report in general is noted, or the update is noted. There's then who is going to be appointed onto the Environment and Climate Change Working Group. And I did hear Councillor Cunnington say that he could attend Fridays, but we're not going to be able to guarantee that those meetings always occur on a Friday. It's just Friday is a day of the week when we've actually got fewer staff present, so that makes it more difficult. And then the third recommendation is to set up, and I'm assuming you want to change that to approved contractor list. The third one was the authorised the spend of 2,500 from Tower Gardens Pavilion maintenance improvement reserves for the floral tubs and hanging baskets around the pavilion and the bandstand. And then as we discussed, there'll be discussions about from the fund that Councillor Clerk mentioned about getting some potential additional floral displays and things like that, perhaps near the entrances, as Councillor Finlay suggested. Then with the silver band, what I appeared to be hearing is that we should certainly, there were several recommendations here. Some were saying that we shouldn't underwrite, some were saying that we should. So there needs to be a vote on around that. And also the additional approaching various other pots of money to see if it can be funded. But of course, as of today, we wouldn't know that. So that, again, is the Welcome Back Fund. The bid has been suggested. So there's some possibilities around that. The £1,000 extra for Cafe Dansand from the reserve, as I say, money that we had in the budget but didn't spend for this. Again, some views have been expressed that should be held until the cafe's been open a while, and then come back. And then the grass cutting issues, I'm reasonably clear, but again needs to be voted on, that you want me to go away and speak in more detail with the school to see exactly what the specification is and come back with some costs and options. And then finally was the issue around giving me delegated authority to speak with East Lindsey District Council with a view to working with them to spend the Welcome Back Fund, which the Minister has said should be in conjunction with town and parish councils.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Finlay.
Yeah, based on what the town clerk's just said, Mr. Mayor, I think I just suggested maybe, obviously chairing the meeting, to go for it one by one and hands up as accordingly per item. Otherwise, it will get confusing.
Well, I think that probably be the best way to do this. Yeah, we'll go through them one by one. Councillor Dennis. Councillor Dennis, sorry, you got your microphone switched up.
Apologies, Mr. Mayor. I do think that the plus we get from the town band is, I believe, that they would have excellent cafe days at the dancing if we put that town band thing into process. I think the business that it would bring to your cafe would help offset some of the costs. And if you could put a lump of money in, like you want to do, and then you could match fund it from the bid or match fund it from another pot of money, we could maybe, move it forward that way. But the cafe would certainly do tremendous, would certainly offset the councillor's costs, sure, the councillor's costs.
Thank you. Councillor Jimmy Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I personally think we should write to the bid first, see what they can come back with, and see if they've got any offers, and then look at money further down the line. But I don't think we should be putting any money in at the minute, because I think we are kind of strapped at the moment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, we've got the recommendations in front. I think we'll do them one by one, and then we'll know where we're at. The clerk will be able to follow that instruction. So recommendation 7.7 point A, recommendation A, the update is noted. Councillor, I don't want to bring the wrong order up. Councillor Edgington. Okay, we're going for this one. This is a vote, is it? All voting for. That's noted. We've got all those, town clerk. My screens, they're all moving everywhere.
Yes, it looks like everybody's 11 hands up.
Certainly different tonight. We must have had an update.
We did.
Everybody's moving about tonight a lot. Okay, moving on to recommendation B. The committee appoint 2 new members of the Environmental and Climate Change Working Group. Councillor Claxton.
Yeah, I'll put myself forward for this. I'd like to look into more of these grass verges with wildflowers. So I would, to save this, is, again, if this saves the council money, I'd like to look into it. So I'll put myself forward. I don't know if I need a seconder if I've put myself forward, but yeah, I'd like to go on that working group, please.
Thank you. Councillor Finlay.
I'd like to second Councillor Claxton for going on it.
Yeah. Do we have anybody else? Anybody else? We've got Councillor Cunnington if it was a Friday, but we can't guarantee that. We've got Councillor Claxton. Is there anybody else that would like to go on the committee? Councillor Cunnington?
Yeah, I mean, would it be possible for me to be a part-time sort of member, Fridays as and when possible?
Town clerk?
It's certainly possible. I mean, I think if we've got one more, then at least we've got the likelihood that the meetings will at least take place. So if Councillor Claxton, if you're voting for him, and then where possible, we'll try and move things around to get Councillor Cunnington onto it from time to time.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So we'll go to the vote then for Councillor Claxton. All those in favour, please show. Yeah, thank you.
I think that's 12. So.
And is Councillor Cunnington already on the town clerk already?
He is, yes.
So we don't need to vote on. Do we want? So we want one more for the committee.
Well, ideally we wanted one more because Councillor Cunnington indicated that he couldn't attend. But if we haven't got any more volunteers, then we'll have to run with what we've got. And as I say, we'll try and include Councillor Cunnington from time to time when resources and times permit.
Okay, thank you. I'll put my name down in town clerk for when Councillor Claxton, when Councillor Cunnington can't make it for any reason, and then we can there'll be 3 of us on there. If everybody's okay with that, we need to go to the vote, or
you can attend any meeting anyway, Mayor.
Thank you. Moving on to C, the committee to authorise the town clerk to set up a preferred contract list, but I think you want that changing to
approved.
Approved. We're going to change that to all approved. All in favour, please show.
Sorry, hold on. Was that with the radius that was said or not?
Town clerk.
There wasn't. Well, it's for you to decide. I'm not here to put forward your proposals. What I would say is the narrower you draw that radius, if you do draw a radius, the more difficult it may be. And as the person who is responsible for the building, there may be times when I need to reserve the right to go beyond that to get a contractor, in urgently if we urgently require them. As I said, on numerous occasions now, we have tried to get contractors, and the contractors aren't very interested in working for us. So yeah, I would say advertisement out in the local press, on our website, in our social media initially, which should attract people locally. If that doesn't do the job, then we might need to expand that advertisement.
Answer your question, Councillor Claxton. Okay.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, can I come in there? I was going to propose. Yeah, sorry, Mr. Mayor. I was going to propose that we use approved local contractors, but obviously that depends on whether it's seconded and whether we vote on it. But I think the word local is a key one for us to know that we are getting, not necessarily a radius, but more local rather than national, as it will stack up cost-wise if we go too far afield. Thank you.
Unless I've read it wrong, the town clerk did state that it would go out locally for people to come forward. That's how I read it. Councillor Dennis?
I can understand the town clerk's predicament, because our policy in my company is to use local, but sometimes there isn't their expertise local to do it. And if you get something to do with IT or with some, I bring mechanics in from Liverpool, I buy stuff and get technicians in from the Midlands, because some of the stuff that we do is high tech and there isn't the local stuff. And I am at one with the clerk to say that it is very, very, very difficult to get local contractors, reliable local contractors. It's very difficult, and I'm not undermining the lads, but the town clerk's right. There's that much aggravation for working for councils. I got a tender through the other day from county, and it was 28 pages. And I thought, the time I fill this in, whatever I'm going to make out of this job, so I never filled it in. I never put myself forward, because yes, your money's blue chip, but they really do call on every, you have to have everything in its place. It has to be absolutely correct, which we are, but it still makes it a real ball ache to have to do, to be honest.
Thank you. Well, we're here. If you want to speak, if you leave I've got a lot of yellow hands up. So, are you all wanting to speak, or are we?
Yeah, no, because we're all voting, Mr. Mayor, I think.
So we're all voting. Okay, we'll go to the vote again then, because some of them have dropped their hands. So we're going to the vote again, please.
We've got 12.
Okay, thank you.
13.
I will have to apologise to you all because you're not, none of you are on my screen. I don't know what it looks like to yourself, but you're bouncing around, moving around all over the place tonight. First time I've experienced this. Thank you. Okay, moving on to recommendation D. The committee authorise a budget of £2,500 from the Tower Gardens and pavilion maintenance and improve reserve the floor tubs and hanging baskets and railing planters for the bandstand. Councillor Finlay.
Was that including looking into the cost of the Jolly Fisherman flower, or will that be at that'll have to go through a motion at another council?
Clerk.
What I'm suggesting is that is included within the give me delegated authority to talk to ELDC about the Welcome Back Fund, and that is put forward as one of the ideas for a floral display in a green area, which I believe will be part of the or within the scope of the funding.
Thank you. Councillor Claxton.
Sorry, hand was up. So
okay, thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Jimmy Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry. How much is actually in the reserve fund if we're taking £2,000 out, £2,500 out?
Off the top of my head, if you wait 1 second, I can grab a bit of paper with it written on. There's currently in the current year, this will slightly go down at the end of the year, but I haven't got those adjustments. But at the beginning of the year, there was £130,000 there.
Thank you. So we've got the recommendation in front of you that the committee authorise a budget of £2,500 from the Tower Gardens pavilion maintenance. Are they willing to move this? Councillor Dennis.
I'll move it, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Ty. Councillor Ty. Can't hear you. You've got your microphone on.
Okay, sorry about that, Mr. Mayor. I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. All in favour, please show. We've got those 10, Clerk. I think we've
got 12.
Yeah, thank you. Recommendation E, deciding whether and how to proceed with the Silver Band concert. Councillor Ty? Oh, no. Councillor Claxton?
Yes, I'll say yes, proceed with the Silver Band concerts. However, I'd still say that we go down the path of asking a bid for some funding first.
Councillor Brooks, Jimmy Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll second Councillor Claxton.
Mayor, can I just clarify, do you want me to also add that into the Welcome Back Fund? So I'm asking them as well.
Yeah, is that Councillor Claxton? Yeah.
Yeah, the more money we get, the more times they can play.
Thank you. Councillor Brooks, you happy with that?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, all in favour, please show. Thank you. Carried. Recommendation F, approve the remaining £1,000 of Caftan Zant furnishings budget to be released from the Tower Gardens Pavilion Maintenance and Improvement Reserve. Councillor Claxton.
Myself, for the last year, and the last year that we've had globally, I'd say no. Myself.
Councillor Brooks, Billy Brooks.
Please exclude me from this vote.
Oh, sorry, yes, thank you. So it's been proposed that we reject this. Councillor Jimmy Brooks.
I'd second Councillor Claxton's proposal, but also if we could add that we'll revisit it in June, July time, if possible.
You okay with that, Councillor Claxton?
Yeah.
Okay, are there any other proposals? Okay. Go to the vote. Got those, Town Clerk? So you're on mute.
There is 9, so that's a simple majority.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to recommendation G. Advise the Town Clerk how to proceed in respect to the grass cutting issues raised. Councillor Cunnington.
Yeah, I propose that we do explore all avenues of taking this work on and then bring it back with some options for us to redebate.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Claxton.
I'll second what Councillor Cannon just said.
Okay, thank you. All in favour, please show.
We have 11, 12.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 6, the grant policy. Amended grant policy.
Just before you go on, there was the other item that I added, which was the delegated authority to work with the LDC Welcome Back Fund.
Right, yeah, sorry about that. Councillor Dennis.
Apologies, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Councillor Ty.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I was just going to tell you there was another item to vote on.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Dankirk.
Yeah, I'm happy to propose that we delegate authority to the clerk to negotiate under this.
Okay.
I'm happy to second that.
Okay, thank you. All in favour, please show.
That's 13, Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to agenda item number 6, the grant policy. Amended grant policy is attached to approval, otherwise a policy amend due to the maximum grant award.
As you remember, at budget time, the amount of grant available for external bodies was reduced. And this is a reflection of what was agreed then, which is that the maximum amount be reduced from £1,000 to £500.
Councillor Sid Dennis.
Sorry, mate, I'm multitasking here.
Councillor Dankirk.
Yeah, I'm happy to propose that we adopt the amendments.
Okay, Councillor Jimmy Brooks.
Well, I'd second them.
Okay, Councillor Claxton, did you wish to speak?
No, thanks.
Okay, well, it's been proposed. Seconded. All in favour, please show.
That's 13 again.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 7, the meeting schedule 2021 to 2022 is attached. To approve the meeting is scheduled for the 21-22 and determine which meetings are to be held via Zoom or in person, legalisation permitting.
This is quite a tricky situation at the moment because the minister has said that he cannot find parliamentary time to put the necessary change in legislation in front of Parliament, which would allow this to happen. But there has been a number of groups have got together and appointed council to look at whether or not this could be allowed within the existing legislation. And I understand that there is going to be a judicial review before the end of April, which will determine whether or not Schedule 12 of the Local Government Act 1972 can be used to, in essence, is this a place? Are we meeting in a place? If they say that the internet is a place, and that attendance via electronic means is attendance, then the meetings will be allowed to continue under the current legislation. If they decide that that isn't the case, then there is no power to continue with video conference meetings. And that's going to leave us in a position where from the 6th of May until the 21st of June, we're unable to have face-to-face meetings or any meetings of any sort. So bear in mind that that could be the case, because we've got some meetings in here which are planned to be Zoom, such as planning, prior to that date. It isn't, if that doesn't happen by the end of April, then you may have to consider giving me delegated authority to respond to those planning applications based on some sort of email system that we had at the beginning of the lockdown last year. You'll also notice that throughout the calendar, we've put planning on a Tuesday, but that assumes that it will be via video conferencing. If it transpires that we can't hold them via video conferencing, then those would have to be moved to a Wednesday, because the hall is booked on a Tuesday now. We've reserved Wednesday throughout the year for council meetings. But as I say, so we'd have to adjust those dates. For council, I think from previous discussions, and we've made the assumption, obviously you can correct that, but council meetings will be face-to-face meetings, so full council face-to-face meetings. I think with management committee, there is some merit in looking at whether or not this type of meeting is actually beneficial, because reach via things like YouTube into the public is far greater than the number of people who would normally attend a meeting, especially a committee meeting, which is usually very, very small indeed, if any. So I think those are the considerations you've got. These are the proposed sorts of dates, but with, as I say, with planning, we might have to alter those if the legislation doesn't hit.
Thank you. Councillor Cunnington.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I can agree with the clerk, and I personally find some meetings a lot easier via the Zoom. I know others don't. I mean, it's his personal preference. But I think any full council meeting should be fair, transparent and open to all. We are restricting the public in this case that don't wish to write in, email in and would sooner get up and speak to be able to attend. So I think full council should definitely be, under any circumstances where possible, held in face-to-face in the town hall. But any other meetings, any committees, any working groups, anything else, really as and where possible, apart from probably an initial meeting for a new working group, or where specified by the group or the committee, should be or could be held via the Zoom.
Thank you. Councillor Dennis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I personally would like to see a mixture of both. I think government need to see sense with the carbon footprint and with the warming, global warming, etc. We're looking at, 21 people getting into their cars and driving down on a freezing cold winter's night. And I think it would be nice if we could do a mixture of both at some stage, because I think that's the way ahead. And I know, especially a lot of the parish councils in Croft, it's a poor old ike out to some bad quality venues where you're all sitting around a super series and much fun. So I think a mixture of both would be advantageous to everybody, is my view. But that's for government, not for me.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I personally would think sometimes it's good. We have been to council meetings, we haven't been able to have made it because of the weather. And I just think there's no excuse now not to be able to hold meetings at all, and for everybody to be able to attend. And so I fully agree. Councillor Cunnington, did you want to come back?
No, sorry, Mr. Mayor, my hand was still up, but I do propose that, and I do take on board Councillor Dennis, and I know he was very supportive in a previous meeting on speaking about this, of hybrid meetings. I'd love to see that, but that's down to the government, and I thank Councillor Dennis for bringing that back up again.
Thank you. Councillor Steve Kirk?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of things. Are we aware at this early stage of any clashes on those dates with other authorities or anything like that? And secondly, interesting piece of data that's come out of America last week. Virtual meetings take 45% longer than actual ones, and certainly looking at lengths of some of our ridiculous council meetings recently, and ridiculous ones at East Lindsey that have actually gone to 6 hours if you join the two council meetings together. There's a lot to be said for having people standing in a cold room. It makes them speak a little bit faster, and we get the business done a lot quicker.
Councillor Dan Kirk?
I'm happy to propose that we support that we adopt the timetable.
Councillor Blackburn?
Yeah. I'm happy to second Councillor Kirk, but I would ask that if the plannings are going to be on a Tuesday, I will need to come off the committee, because on Tuesday nights I'm normally at other council meetings elsewhere.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, just a point of clarification. The legislation doesn't apply to working group meetings, so they can continue to be by Zoom, whether or not the legislation is found to cover meetings or not, because the public generally don't get invited to working group meetings. They're held in private.
Okay, thank you. Can I just remind Councillor Edgington and Councillor Dennis, you've got your microphones turned on. So we've had it proposed and seconded. All in favour?
Mr. Mayor, I did ask a question of the clerk about clashes of dates. Did you know of any?
Oh, I did look on that date, Councillor Kirk, because as you know, at ELDC, we usually clash at Christmas, and we have an afternoon meeting, and sometimes we don't get back in time. I did have a look at their calendar, and they've got no dates on there at the moment. So I did look for that one.
Mayor, that is often the problem, that although dates are will eventually be set by East Lindsey, I don't think that will be done until after the annual meeting, and they're not done at consistent times. So they may be afternoon meetings, they may be evening meetings, they may be often on different days of the week as well. So it's very difficult to plan around other authorities, and this council is a separate, independent body of its own, and should be able to plan its own meetings. If there are likely to be some clashes at some time, and there always have been, and I think we just perhaps have to live with that.
Okay, Councillor Kirk. Okay, thank you. So we've got Dick proposed and seconded. All in favour, please show.
That's 13.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 8, Mutual Gain World Cafe attached to receive information on the Mutual Gain World Cafe and consider offering the use of the community hall without charge for the event. Councillor Finlay?
Yeah, what's the waiting room for this one?
Yeah.
Mayor, can I suggest that the most that this would be a category B declaration, and in fact the two people who can probably give the most information about this are actually councillors Finlay and Burnham. And as mayor, with a category B, you can ask them if they would like to contribute as members of the public, and it might be worthwhile them doing so. They, of course, wouldn't be able to vote as a category B, but they can certainly add to the debate by giving information about what this is about and how it would work.
Okay, thank you. Quite happy to ask Councillor Finlay and Burnham if they would like to stay in as members of the public and have their view on this. Councillor Finlay.
Yeah, I'd be more than happy to have some inputs on it if it helps promote it. As it's not, there's no profit involved in it. It's more a community thing than it is anything else. So if it helps people aware of it, support the community and people can know about it, I think it's brilliant.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Burnham.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. At the end of the day, this World Cafe, we're not attending as councillors, we're attending as members of the public, but we will be involved with the public, engaging the public to speak about anything they like. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Steve Kirk.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's an excellent idea, and to save those people being excluded, I was going to move standing orders and go straight to the vote on this. I fully support it. If I got a seconder, we could move straight to the vote.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Billy Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, quite agree with Councillor Kirk. It's a great idea. Yeah, I can't see why I wouldn't support them.
Okay, Councillor Dennis. So, Town Clerk, we've got it proposed and seconded, so we can move.
I say move to the vote then.
Move to the vote. Yeah, thank you.
You have 11, and I think Councillor Saxon, Councillor Saxon is also indicating that he's voting for.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 9, the Speedwatch scheme, which is attached to consider participating in the Speedwatch scheme. Councillor Dennis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, I've got no paperwork on this. In my bundle, there's no paperwork on this.
You consider participating in the Speedwatch scheme. You've got the paperwork in front of you.
I mean, Mayor, this is essentially something which has come out from and has been around for some time. I think it's been to a version of council at least twice before. It works. I've seen it working in some areas, and it can work very well in some areas. Essentially, it would be volunteers going out in their high vis with having been trained, having been insured, and having the right equipment. They can capture information about people who are speeding. They can't. They won't be prosecuted. But if people are regularly caught by that means, the police will go and speak to the culprits with a view to trying to make them more aware of the issue of speeding. So that's essentially how it works. So it does have speeding detection equipment and various signs that are put up. So it can act as a bit of a deterrent as well. Now, where it works really well is if you've got a village with a single road through it that attracts speeders, because everybody knows about that. The community is quite often focused on reducing it. You get the volunteers, and often the parish is quite willing to fund the equipment, training, etc., that's needed to do it. The debate that's happened in Skegness previously is there hasn't really been a focus around a particular area or particular areas where this might happen, and there's been some issue about the cost of it. So if you're looking in the papers, after the letter from the Lake Lincolnshire Road Safety Partnership, you'll see, and check your speed 30. On the following pages in section 3, there's the costs are set out there, and essentially there's an application fee to apply for the scheme, which is £40. There's then a survey fee, and the recommendation is that you have all of the sites that you want to be surveyed, because you pay one fee. If you want to go back later and add sites, that's going to cost you extra money. So that's another £40. The passive notices are £10 each. So those are the things that say 30 or 40 miles an hour. The speed indicating devices, there are 2 types. There's a basic version, which is £1,700, or there's a more sophisticated version with data recording and Bluetooth, and that's £2,000. There's then extra fixtures and fittings, so for signs, so approximately £60 each for those. So those are the costs that are involved. So you can see you're probably looking at somewhere between well, at the bottom end of the scale, about £2,000 up to maybe 2,200, 2,300, depending on how many signs that you have. We'd also need to ensure the volunteers that are brought forward. I believe that all the training and that is provided by the Road Safety Partnership, and they also have overall control. So we would have to show them our public liability, because we have to effectively insure against anything that might take place. So it's underwriting any issues that county council or the safety partnership might experience. So that's the scheme, and it's really, do you want to do it? If you did, then we would have to look at taking money from reserves to fund this, because there isn't currently any money in the budget to do it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Jimmy Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Ware. Wow, I'm sure that's gone up for when they set up the Burley Marsh one. They are a fantastic idea. I think it's for volunteers to come to the councillor who will support them, but it's not something the council, I don't think, should actively go out and do it. It should be for volunteers to do, and then the council support them. Thank you.
Councillor Dennis.
Yes, I'm aware that you've got them in borough, because they sent me a letter. So that was pretty exciting after just being banned for 6 months to get that one come through the post. That was a cracking one. That, yeah, we've got it at Thursby Group of Parishes, and it's as the clerk says, it is for small villages with a single road going through. That's really where it really works, and I'm sure it would work in places like Everington's Lane, etc., and certain little speed things. But from what I've been hearing, I don't know if Jimmy found this, but 1 or 2 of the elderly parishioners who were doing it in Thursby Group for Parishes got quite a bit of abuse sometimes over it, and it is a very, very difficult thing, and it's a considerable amount of money if you're not going to use it. I think if you have enough volunteers come forward and they're interested in doing it, and then as a good base of them, because it takes 3, it has to be 3 out at a time. Is that right, Jimmy, or is it 2 or 3? But yeah, 3, I think it is. Yeah, and if people, if a group of people came forward, then I could see it being and use it regular. But it's going to cost. Well, I don't know what with your admin on it as well, Town Clerk. You're looking at the thick end of 4K, which is a good lump of money if it's not going to be used. If it's going to be used, then yeah, it is advantageous, and I'm led to believe it does work. But it's got to be used, and therefore, I think we need for somebody to go away, and if the people come back, then we can have a look at it again. Is my view. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cunnington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, question for the clerk, really. Are we restricted on any roads or areas in which we cannot use this thing, this equipment, this device? And then I'll come back. Thank you.
Sorry, Mayor, you moved just as I clicked my unmute button and I muted you. In answer to Councillor Cunnington, that's really what the surveys are for. So the council would choose the sites, and the Lincolnshire Road partnership with the police would decide whether or not that site was appropriate. I mean, if it involved volunteers standing in a dangerous area, for example, then I would suggest that they would probably decline to allow that.
Thank you for that. I was thinking more where we've got problems, we're all aware of it. There's a lot of councillors that are trying to do work and deal with things, but would it benefit us at all with the area near Southview? Could we pick a location on one of the little lay-by entrance or anything and use that as evidence and try to protect things in that way to give us some sort of information?
I don't think it provides the council with any information whatsoever. The information that's gathered goes back to the police, so the council would not be involved in understanding who was speeding, and in fact, I think that would be probably a breach of data protection. But yeah, I mean, you could certainly use it as a deterrent to speeding, because I guess if you've got people standing with, speeding equipment in yellow high-vis vests, then people tend to, slow down when they see that. So that in essence is part of the deterrent. If people distantly speed and get caught by the equipment, then the police have the information which to write to and have a conversation with them, but it's not evidence for prosecution.
No, but us as council, we're obviously passionate about that area, but obviously it is a bit more high risk. It's in a higher speed limit, and I wasn't looking for specific data, but would we get any sort of idea on like basic numbers in a day? Would we see the screen to see how many numbers, so we can make a tally from the volunteers as to how many?
I mean, you might get anecdotal information back from the volunteers, and it may be possible to get overall statistics from the Road Safety Partnership about how successful the scheme is. But I don't think we'd be getting that direct. I think it would have to come through the Road Safety Partnership. I mean, really, it's not the council running this. It'd be clear. Council would be funding it, would be paying for the equipment, providing the insurance and the safety, if you like, of the volunteers, but the training, the expertise, the equipment and the regulations would all come from the Safety Partnership.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Thank you. Councillor Dankirk. I've got you on the list, Councillor Saxon. I haven't forgot you. You're on the bottom.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, we're already paying our council taxes for the policing. We're already paying the council tax for Lincolnshire County Council. This is just yet another way of residents of Skegness paying for a service that they should probably otherwise be having. That's one take of the argument. The second point is, if we get members of the public that want to do this, I'd be more inclined to support it. If we've got a list of volunteers that would actively participate and do that, do you know what? I think it'd be worth a punt. But at the moment, we don't have that. So what I would like to suggest is, what I'd like to propose is that the clerk advertises through our social media platforms and various other channels to see if there is actually any interest. And if there is no interest or little interest, to give him delegated authority not to pursue this.
Thank you. Councillor Simon Claxton.
I'm a bit confused, really. We had a couple of councillors go down about the 158 speed limit and was told that there's no valid reason to lower the speed limit on that road, and then they come out with a community speed watch. I, for one, would not be supporting this on the purpose of that, and the fact being that we have to pay for it, and this money will have to come from the residents of Skegness, and I believe that they pay enough already.
Thank you. Councillor Steve Kirk.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Oh, wait a minute, the camera's not working again. Come on, keep working. Thank you. Yeah, this has been around for quite a while, so it's not new. It's got nothing to do with the 158 or any other road in Skegness. It's been around for many years. But I would urge some caution. I'm thinking particularly, I know Councillor Dennis knows about this, about Croft. We've had 3 volunteers come forward, which is absolutely fantastic. This is about 3 years ago. So Croft purchased some signs and had the training and everything. Then one of the volunteers drops out. So Croft Parish Council are left with the stuff and nobody to actually use it. I'm thinking about how difficult we find it to get volunteers, half a dozen volunteers to help marshal our Remembrance Parade. If we can't get volunteers to marshal that, what is the chance that we're going to get a good number of volunteers come forward who are quite happy to stand at the side of the road with basically a speed gun or whatever, and the abuse that goes with it? Because they will get abuse, there's absolutely no doubt about it. So I think if you have a village with one road going through the middle and half a dozen motivated people, it can work. But for a town like Skegness, I agree entirely with what Councillor Dankirk said. We pay our money. Road Safety Partnership have let us down time and time again. They put all the stupid speed limits on the A52 using dodgy data, and when we give them actual data about deaths on the 158, they choose to ignore us. So I personally wouldn't do them any favours whatsoever. They should be doing this. That's what they're paid for through their precept that goes to the police force. So I couldn't support this. It wouldn't work in a town, and it doesn't actually work in a lot of villages.
Okay, thank you. Councillor George Saxon. Councillor Saxon, can't hear you. Is your microphone plugged in? It's switched on, but we can't hear you. Can't hear you. Sorry. We'll bring Councillor Blackburn in and then come back to Councillor Saxon in a second. Councillor Blackburn.
Yeah, I was going to say something on the lines of Councillor Dankirk, to be fair. I mean, the residents are always moaning about the speeding, and we ask the police if they can look at Evington's Lane, if they can look at the 158, and then they bring something like this and we turn around and go, no, I know it's a lot of money, and I know it probably won't work as well in Skegness, but I do think that we should give the residents the option, and probably, like Dan says, put it out there on the social networks we've got just to see. And if we don't get a reasonable amount of volunteers, then we don't go with it, you know, just to see what the reaction's like, because that's not going to do any harm, is it?
Okay. Councillor Saxon, are you back with us? Are you got your microphone working? Councillor Saxon?
Now?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Yeah. as a start, Kirk, I agree with a lot of it. He came to trustee and we turned it down then. It was so expensive. We can't afford it. We can't. So having 1,000 in the gardens and 1,000 this. It stops the Lincolnshire Partnership, Safety Partnership, fulfilling the commitments that they should bring. And we never get at speed on the 158.
Councillor Saxon, you're breaking up. Can you switch your video off and see if that'll help you? Your video. If you turn your video off, we might be able to hear you. Turn your video off and just leave your microphone on. Right, now try.
Yeah, we'll never get a scheme like this because I never even look at it. They say, well, you can do it yourselves. I can't see if you get volunteers where they're checking speeds and whatever speed they're doing, it's pointless because the police don't do anything about it. They can't. They have to write to them, which is more expense. They'll just tear the letter up and do the same again. It's just pointless and too expensive.
Thank you. Councillor Finlay.
Yeah, I think we've pretty much hit the nail on the head. That you've only got to look at your council tax bill. Lincolnshire County Council, with their policies, have said that, you know, unless it's under their policy, they'll do nothing about speed reduction. They're off, you know, they're working alongside the Lincolnshire Road Safety Partnership and offering people this. So I think from that side of it, it's daft. But the other side of it is, you know, the police commissioner give us a massive presentation, very well presented, with tens of millions of pounds of investment, hundreds of new recruits, and we're looking for people to stand out in the cold or the baking sun at the side of the road doing the job. I just think there's so many minuses it. And as regards, I don't think we should waste any time and resources on it whatsoever. You know, it's not for us to manage. It's not for us to, you know, put people's lives at risk. I think there's some really, really good points amongst us all. The general feel amongst us all. I think we should, you know, it's just a no from me across the board. Not waste any time on it.
Thank you, Councillor Dennis.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I see where you're all coming from. I think the 158 doesn't work in this type of scheme because I think it's a 30 or 40 or 50 mile an hour limit. Well, there isn't one on the 158, it's 60 mile an hour, I think, if I'm correct. But I do agree with Councillor Blackburn in maybe we should defer the vote and just put it out and just and see what the residents come back with. I think they, you know, we represent our residents, and I think it's only right that they have a say. Don't make a decision, just put it out and then let's see what comes back, and then we'll have a little bit. I think that would be a fairer way.
Councillor Burnham.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, it's a great scheme and I would back it. But at the moment, the residents are already paying for a service they're not getting. And another reason is this council can't afford at this present time to pay for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cunnington.
Sorry, Matt, legacy hand.
Councillor Blackburn. Councillor Blackburn.
Councillor Blackburn has indicated that she.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
left
I
her
left
hand.
my hand up before. Sorry.
Councillor Billy Brooks had his hand up at one moment. He's gone. Okay. So you've got a proposal and it's been seconded. I personally, I won't be supporting this this spending money. It's okay, but I've seen so many people get volunteers, set up beach cleans and all that, and only for them to be let down on the day. So if we're going to be buying equipment and it's not going to be used, I can't support that. Councillor Ty.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we've talked about this for long enough. I think it should move to the vote.
Okay.
Mayor, I'm a little bit unclear as to what's being voted on because I think two councillors have proposed that it's put out, or at least two have proposed that it's been put out on social media with a view to letting the public come back and then the committee or council making a decision at a later date. I don't think it should be something that's delegated to me. It should, because of there are budget implications. So I think it does need to come back. The other proposal, there seemed to be at least again 2 or 3 councillors who were saying no, there shouldn't be any more time on it. So I think I'm to be honest, I'm not clear which one was put first and which one was seconded first. I think we need to clarify exactly what we are or what you are voting on.
Okay, I've got 3 hands up. If you're not wishing to speak again, if you are, then leave your hands up. Councillor Dan Clerk.
After seeking counsel from this council, I think I'm going to retract my proposal, and I would in turn propose that we just reject it.
Thank you. Councillor Claxton.
I'd like to propose that we reject this.
You can second it, Councillor Claxton. It's just been proposed that it's been rejected by Councillor Dan Clerk. So are you happy to second that?
Oh yeah, well, I'll second it, but he just said he wanted to put it through the first time. I didn't know if that still stood. That's all.
No, he just rejected that we reject this totally. There's enough time on it. So it's been proposed and seconded then that we reject this. So all in favour, please show. Got that, Town Clerk? I think we have. You on mute, Town Clerk. I can't.
That's 13, including Councillor Saxon.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to the next agenda item, number 10, the planning applications. I think this is where we lose some. Councillor Billy Brooks has got to go.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Councillor Jimmy Brooks.
Thank you. Good night.
Councillor Edgington's going as well.
Councillor Edgington's going. And
Thank
I
you.
usually say goodbye to Councillor Dennis as well.
And Councillor Cunnington,
and Councillor Clerk.
And
Good
Cunnington,
night,
please.
And Councillor Cunnington.
And can you remove me, please, because I can't exit. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Cunnington.
Have we got enough now?
Right, that leaves 1,
9 of us, I think.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yes, that's fine.
I can still remove myself, then, can't I, Mr. Mayor?
Sorry?
I can still lead the meeting there, can't I?
Will we still have enough, Town Clerk, if Councillor Finlay leaves?
Yeah. It depends whether anybody's going to declare any declarations that they haven't already done.
Right,
Steve, can I just ask some questions, if I may? On what grounds are people declaring interests if they're on? What's the reasons for ducking out of? Not ducking out, wrong phrase. Well, you know what I mean. What's the material ground for not being allowed to be a consultee for the town council?
Well, in the case of district councillors, if they're on planning committee, then they will be dual-hatted councillors. Now, actually, in law, it doesn't stop them from contributing to the planning committee or the planning decisions, as long as they are clear with the public that they retain the right to determine or make a decision at a later date based on any evidence comes before them. But I know that many of them, following training, are nervous about doing that, and therefore they withdraw on that basis. Declaring an interest otherwise is have you got a financial interest in the in it? If it's a category B, then are you a representative on the group or in respect of the applicant? So, for instance, if it was a school applying for an additional playground or something, but I mean, having said that, most of those go through the Lincolnshire County Council rather route and probably wouldn't find our way to us anyway.
The reason why I ask that, if I may come back, is because often dual-hatted councillors can, and in the past, bring information that we're not necessarily privy to, which can help us formulate our opinions, because at the end of the day, we're only consultee in our opinion to this planning matter. And I was just wondering whether we're able to break the cycle of everybody with valuable opinions not being able to offer that opinion when they're elected as a town councillor.
I tend to agree with you that there's no reason why they can't bring that, you know, knowledge and perhaps expertise of being on a planning committee to it, other than I believe that they've probably been advised to withdraw from those meetings, because so that there's no evidence of predetermination, which is the you know, what somebody who's made a planning application, they could challenge a councillor and therefore the decision on the basis of predetermination. So if they do take part, it is important that it's quite clear that they make it quite clear that they're not predetermining, and they will be open to any additional information that may come forward at a later stage.
Councillor Saxon. Councillor Saxon.
That's what I was going to say about previous councillors, as Danker said, don't they've done it best, but they can change their mind if anything further comes up when there's an East Lindsey meeting. I don't think these newer councillors this time are aware of this, and if they are, they're just uneasy to declare it.
Okay. Councillor Blackburn.
Did you get that?
Yeah, I think, Dan, it's more when you have sat on an East Lindsey planning, if you've said something in a town planning, then it can be brought up and thrown back at you that you predetermined because you've said this in the town meeting previously. It doesn't really matter for us so much, but I think it's more East Lindsey end that can make them look a bit as if they're already predetermined. And while I'm on it, because I attend regular meetings on a Tuesday at the Borley Marsh Town Council, can I be taken off the planning for the further meetings, because they're always going to be on a Tuesday now, aren't they?
Clerk.
Well, they'll be on a Tuesday if we're allowed to continue with Zoom meetings. If they're not, then they'll
leave it for now, but
yeah.
I will have to. Yeah.
Okay, I've got Councillor Finlay and then Councillor Kirk. I mean, we're going to move on with this planning. It's not here to discuss what's, you know, I don't think any of us have got any.
Say, you've got enough. You're not in court, so I'm leaving the meeting. Good night, all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor, we'll all put the hands down. Okay, we're moving on to planning applications. 10.1. This is a time planning permission, change of use of ex-former pharmacy to former shop and wine bar, and conversion of an existing flat into 2 number of flats. Works already commenced. Are we any objections to this, Town Clerk?
No, there's lots of support. I'm just going to share the plans. There's lots of support. There's one that appears as if it might be an objection, but it actually then goes on to support it. So it's a bit of an odd one. But generally there's lots of support.
Well, I think this is absolutely fantastic. For any of you that's driven by to see an empty shop that there's looked an eyesore, and to come up to the standard that it is right at this moment in time, I think it's absolutely amazing how many local people are willing to invest in Skegness. And it's great to see that they have put all their hard-earned money on the back. I'm thinking that they can make Skegness a better place. So I'm all in support of this, and I'd like to move this. But I will bring the other councillors in. I've got a list. I can't see. Councillor Claxton.
As it says, works already commenced, and it's to a very high standard. We can see what they've done with the place already. From what it was to what it is now, it's a total transformation. Can't nothing but support this one.
Thank you, Councillor Dankirk.
Yeah, I'm happy to second your proposal, Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, all in favour, please show. Okay, thank you. 10.2, Mr. A. Cripsey, planning permission to change of use of conversion of alterations to the first floor of the former department store to provide a roller rink, soft play area, video game area with a hot food area and seating area to include the installation of security shutters and the removal of a single existing shop front and replaced with a new serving chair, change the use of existing detached door to provide an amusement centre, escape room facility at Prince George Street. Councillor, have you left your is there councillors wishing to speak straight away before the town clerk? You've got your hands up.
I'm struggling to get this to chair at the moment. Yeah.
Just have a look at the list.
Mayor, it might be worth taking 10.2 with 10.3 as well, since they're both effectively the same. The
same building and same application, so we can take this on block. Once again, before bringing anybody in, I think, you know, to see a business, especially a department store this size, actually taking shape on our high street, Lumley Road, is an absolute brilliant thing. And once again, people are willing to invest in Skegness, and I think it can only be a positive sign. Councillor Claxton.
Yeah, this complex is going to be such a good thing for the town. Again, someone willing to invest in such unprecedented times.
Sorry, can Councillor Saxon turn his microphone off, please? I can't hear a word what you're saying. Councillor Claxton, carry on. Thank you.
As I was saying, can't help but support someone in such unprecedented times investing money in Skegness. I'm just interested to get in there myself to see what it looks like. I've heard so many good things about what Skegness used to have. So now we're going to see what Skegness is going to have. So I propose that we move this one.
Thank you. Councillor Blackburn.
Yeah, Councillor Claxton said it all. I'd just like to second him.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ty.
Yeah, I concur with Councillor Claxton.
Okay,
just for clarity, that's 10.2 and 10.3.
And 10.3, yeah.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. All in favour, please show. Have you got all the votes there, Town Clerk? Some of you, I'll just bring my list up.
Yes.
Yes, yeah, all in favour. Okay, moving on to 10.4. Mr. D. Shepherd. Skegness Police Station, Park Avenue. Planning permission, direction of vehicle and pedestrian gates, a security fencing to a maximum height of 3 metres to the rear and side of the existing police station. Councillor Claxton.
Just a question, is this application by the police or is this by a resident that wants to put a fence up so the police can't?
That'll be it'll be the police station because it backs up to.
So have they got, so are they going to have another entrance? Because that's already gated around there. I'm just asking. I don't know.
Planning permission, erection of vehicle and pedestrian gates, and security fencing to a maximum height around the area, as detailed on the plan.
Is there any objections?
Not that I've seen.
Councillor Dunkirk.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a police station at the end of the day. It's a bit of an ugly building. It's obviously there to serve a purpose. So to keep the unsavouries in, I'm obliged to propose that I'll support this application.
Thank you. Councillor Burnham.
Yeah, I'd like to second Dan Kirk's proposal, please.
Okay, it's been proposed and seconded. All in favour, please show. Okay, thank you. 10.5. This is S Green. Consent to display 4 number non-illuminated hoarding signs at the existing roundabout, Jubilee Clock Tower, Tower Esplanade.
Mayor, I have written to Lincolnshire County Council regarding this on a non-planning matter, which is to do with the fact that we cut the grass around there, and the placement of signs make that very much more difficult because of the height of the roundabout. There are objections to this, both from one from a member of the public and the second from one of the heritage groups.
What are these signs for, Town Clerk? Are they actually permanent fixtures to the clock tower roundabout?
I'll show you an example. I'll have to come out of this share and go into a different share to do it.
They're advertising signs for. Oh, there you go.
The idea is that they're looking at putting these on all roundabouts in Lincolnshire, or that they can.
I wouldn't have thought that Skegness roundabout, with our famous clock tower in the centre of our town, would want anything like this. So I won't be supporting this at all. Councillor Dankirk.
Oh, sorry, my microphone's unmuted. I do apologise.
It's okay. I didn't hear it.
It's an absolute joke.
It is.
Surely, it's as if you're putting signs outside the church. It's a historical building. How can they think that we could possibly support just for Lincolnshire Council to make a little bit of dough from advertising? It's outrageous. So I would object on the strongest grounds.
I propose we object it if you'd like to second it, but we'll bring the others in to speak. But I knew the meeting goes on and we do get into debates, but I didn't think we'd gone over to the 1st of April. That is for sure. I'm not aware of it being that late. Councillor Burnham.
Yeah, absolutely disgusting. And all I'm going to say is save our clock tower.
Yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Claxton.
I mean, this clock tower's iconic. You couldn't put things like that. It's an eyesore. As you can see, me clock tower is behind me. It's a beautiful part of the town. It would just near enough disfigure it. So I couldn't support this at all.
We can't allow this when they won't allow us to put it back to its former glory with all the illuminations on it. Certainly. Councillor Blackburn. Sorry, I thought you came in for the signs, but then I realised you left your hand up.
Yeah, no, I'll put it up at the beginning. It don't matter. But like you said, they stopped us putting Christmas decorations around there. And can you imagine there's going to be, 8 posts? And the grass at the minute looks gorgeous. It's listed to, we all love it. But all the grass, it's going to look so scruffy doing around 8 little posts. No.
There's some crocuses under there somewhere.
It looks lovely at the minute. Really nice. The grass is gorgeous.
Councillor Ty.
Yeah, I can completely concur with everybody. I mean, I find it absolutely ludicrous that they've even put planning in for it. It's absolutely ludicrous. No, I could not support this at all.
Councillor Barry, we'll bring you in, but it has been proposed and seconded that we reject this.
I'd just like to say that's 4 no's from me.
It would be worth adding to the objection some actual planning grounds, which is firstly not in keeping with the listed nature of the building, at the an iconic building at the centre of the town centre.
Sorry, Town Clerk, could I just also point out that there's round the roundabout there is 4 roundabout walls. If they wanted signage, they could fix them to them walls. Why they have to go and spoil the view of the clock tower is unacceptable. So I think we could put that in there, that there is enough walls around there.
No, don't suggest that. They'll want to stick
we still want to say it, but I can't believe that they've come up with this. I really can't.
There's actually a planning application in. They want to put the same idea in the one Lyndhurst Garden Centre, at Borough.
Yeah,
that's in theirs this week. But it's not so bad there, but not at the clock. Definitely not.
No.
I think the way that the process has worked, if you actually look at the applicant, but it appears to be I suspect that what's happened is that Lincolnshire County Council may have gone out to a company and said, these are our roundabouts. There will be some sort of advertising premium, I'm guessing, from having those signs, and that the county council would therefore get an income. But it looks, taking this one into account, it looks as if there hasn't been that sort of pre-work in determining what would be appropriate ones, and therefore the planning applications have just come in. But other grounds would be, because of the elevated nature of the grassed area where this would be sited, would be surely that's going to block vision and view as well, which is a highways danger, which would be another planning reason for it to be for an objection.
And can we also include, Town Clerk, that we had a sad death, fatality there this year already due to vision. So I think that should go in there as well.
Isn't the clock part of the heritage thing of the Tower Gardens, or part of the? Yeah, well, is that not a planning reason?
It's grade 2 listed.
Yeah.
So
I would presume that the person who's put this application in probably doesn't even know what that roundabout is all about, or even the location, or whether it's got an historic clock on it.
I think with it being grade 2 listed is enough to say, there's no way it's going to happen.
Yeah. You've got all those down then, Town Clerk?
Yeah.
You have.
Okay, so it's been proposed and seconded. All in favour, please show. Thank you very much. 10.6, Mr. Arlongworth. Planning permission, change of use for the existing former shop and printers offices to a mixed use of compromising a retail, packaging and store, distillery, bar and gin school. Work started. Town Clerk.
Sorry, wrong share. This is no longer are the planning applications all in the same format. They're in umpteen different formats, which means that I have to have lots of different shareable documents. So please bear with me just a minute while I try and find that one. Yeah.
I presume here this is the building Old Rates place, is it?
Yeah.
Councillor Blackburn.
Yeah, I would. Am I speaking? Yeah. I would like to propose we go with this, because I mean it's a bit of a tourist attraction and it's something else in the town, isn't it? So I propose we go with it.
Yeah, I think it's one of them things on the map where the more places you've got to visit, the more you entice people to come. Whether it's a trail or whatever, I think we need museums and we need places for people to visit. We've got some lovely things around the area.
Yeah, so, and lots of people like gin.
Yeah. Councillor Claxton.
Yeah. Again, this seems to be a bit of a tourist attraction. This brand of gin, the name's getting far and wide. So another business in Skegness would support.
Okay, so it's been proposed and seconded. All in favour, please show. Thank you. Well, that finally brings us to the end of tonight's meeting. Thank you all for taking part, and all the listeners out there, thank you for joining us via Zoom. We have got a different Zoom setup, so I apologise for hands going everywhere and people are disappearing off screen, but I'll thank you. I wish you a happy Easter. I want you to stay safe. We're getting there. People are getting injections. I've had mine last week. And I just want you all to stay safe and just be vigilant, and let's continue the good work that we've gone through to get this far. Just so